Well, hello there. I'm Niels, and today I would like to show you how we can import new asset data, how we can change asset data in your ALIS instance. That's right, we have a self-service module that you can maintain the assets that are in ALIS, in your ALIS instance, and that you can get a correct and accurate reflection of what is installed on site and what is in your system to view and monitor what is going on. So here we have our training instance in Malmo, and you see that we have our assets with certain properties of name and type and located in a certain maintenance area and with a certain GPS location. So now we are able to add new instances that don't have these properties yet, or we can download the current instance assets that you have and modify them in Excel, for example, and then re-upload them into the instance. So first, let's show how you can modify some assets. So here you have, for example, our taxiway centerline Charlie lights. So we can click on them and you see they are located in taxiway Charlie. But let's say that this taxiway is now changing and that we want to rename that sub area and to basically relocate or reassign that property of those assets. So now we can select the assets that we would like to change. We can open up our asset overview list based, and here in this burger menu, it's called, we can export the selected assets. So you see now a Excel sheet is being generated in CSV, and we are able to open that sheet, and you see that we have all of the properties of these assets. So now using Excel, we are able to change the name or the identifier or the maintenance areas that we talked about. So here, for example, now we can say these lights are not taxiway Charlie, but they are taxiway Alpha. And then we can save this sheet and then import this sheet again into our system. So now we can go into our burger menu, now say import assets, and we can drag and drop that same CSV file that we modified in Excel and choose what ALIS has to do with it. You see that we can accommodate for different referencing matching behaviors of the assets that we have in the Excel sheet and the assets that we already have in our instance. We can use the automatic mode, or we can choose on which field we wanted to reference. So in automatic mode, as it says here, asset identification is done by ID first, then via name, and if no multiple matches were found, the location is used. So we'll just stick to the auto settings and we'll create assets if the assets were not existing yet, or update them for the ones where it's able to match using the previous setting. So now I can click on Analyze File. You see that the system will have a look at our CSV file. It will see that all of the headers, all of the details that are in there are correct, and we can execute or import. So now you see that if we go back to our system, the assets that we had before are not there because we had a filter active of taxiway Charlie. And guess what? Now taxiway Charlie is removed because that sub area is empty, and we have our taxiway Alpha, and our assets here we will see are now in sub area taxiway Alpha and in the main area taxiway. So just as we change the sub area, we can change the main area, we can change the name of the asset, we can change the type of the asset. So that really allows you in a very easy way to update and your installed base in ALIS. If, for example, we have a certain section that I added by mistake, it's called taxiway delta, and you will see that it's way out of the area. Yeah? So these are the assets of taxiway delta, and I would like to have them removed from my instance. So how can I do this? I can first of all download all of my asset data. So you see that I will select all of the assets that I have, in total 43 assets. I can again export these assets. I can get a CSV file that I can open in Excel. And now you see we have all of our asset data. So if we now want to remove a certain section, I'm able to filter those out in Excel. I'll activate the filter and I'll only filter down to the sub area of taxiway delta. So these assets now I want to have removed out of ALIS. So I will select them. I will say delete row. So now when I look at all of my assets again, they are gone. There's no more taxiway delta. I will save this sheet so we did not touch any of the other assets, and we can now import that sheet again. So here we'll select that sheet, and we will not say create update, because then it will just not update the assets that we removed. We will say replace all assets. So it will remove all of your assets and only use the ones that are in the sheet. Yeah. So then by doing so, it will only have the assets that we had in that sheet. You are also able to only replace the assets in a certain sub area. So for example, we would be able to have a if we would have taxiway delta and we would only have one asset in there, it would remove the other two and only keep one, but then also limit it to taxiway delta and not for all assets. But now, since we downloaded all of assets of our instance, we can use the replace all assets. Know that if you are doing such an action by replacing all assets, it's always good to have a previous backup of your instance as well if something would go wrong. So now you will see I will analyze the file. So now we're going to have 40 assets in total. I will execute the import, and you see that it says records updated 40 and records deleted 3. So now if I go back to my instance, you will see that the assets that we have of taxiway delta are now removed, and we only have the assets of taxiway alpha and bravo yet. So that's a method to remove assets from your instance. Know that we are not actually removing them, we are archiving them, because maybe some maintenance happened on those assets, and if we would actually delete them, we would break the link in the database. So we are not actually deleting them, we are archiving them, but you will not be able to use them anymore in the system. And that's obviously your goal, for you to delete these assets. So you see we now saw how we can change assets, how we can remove assets. So now let's have a look how we can add assets to the system. Okay, so let's have a look how we can add assets to our instance. For example, here I now have one save doc in the system, save doc X, and let's give him some friends. So to be able to add assets, we need to have a certain amount of minimum information. So in the question mark, the manual, and then you can access a documentation page on the import-export function that we have in ALIS. So here we go, it's under web application and then the ALIS asset management. So then it all talks about the export function, which we already did, an alternative method for exporting through the reporting. And here we are at the import function. So what would we need in order to import, which is here under this table? You see that we need to have a name, a main area, a sub area, and an asset type, and a latitude and longitude. These are our required fields. So let's start off with the location. To be able to get a location of an asset, you can do it in multiple ways. It can come from an extract of an AutoCAD drawing or a list that you received on the installed base of your installation. And now we will just go to Google Maps. Google My Maps is easy to use to get a reference location. So here we have our training instance on Google Maps, and we can simply click on a location to add a new point. So we'll call it Gate 2. And you see that then we receive the latitude and longitude. So we can now put that in a Excel sheet for us in order to create that. So we have foreseen a example file which you can use to create new assets. This is the example file. We'll want to have it to download that file. There we go. We will open it in Excel. So then you see the minimum information that we need, and here we now have some sample data inside. So we had that, we just copied that latitude, longitude from Google Maps. So we'll make sure that it has the correct, only the latitude in one field, the longitude in the other field. And then we'll give it a name. So we're going to call it Cape 2. And then we have to give it a certain asset class or asset type. And so we already had in our system the SaveDocX. So we'll make it of the same type. If you would need to create a new asset type, you can do so in the asset type list, new asset type, and then create the new asset type here. So let's continue with our Excel sheet. So the asset class will be the SaveDocX, and then we will also use the same main area and sub area. So we have a gate main area, and we had the sub area that was called AVDGS. All right, so now we have our first asset. And we'll want to create another one. So we'll create this sample, we'll delete the sample data, and now just copy paste this one. So now this will say gate 3, these are the same properties, and we'll get another location. So we'll also make one on the other side, and we'll call it gate 3. So now again we have the latitude and longitude, which we will add into our Excel sheet. So there are, as I said, many different ways on getting latitude, longitude. This is now just because we have only a few assets that we want to add. It's more than good enough. There we go. Good, so now we have our small import sheet of 2 assets that we want to add. We have gate 2 and gate 3, and we can save this, this information. And now we can go into our ALIS instance. And in our ALIS instance, we can go to Asset Data, Asset Import. So now we have our import module. We can drag and drop the Excel sheet or CSV that we just created. We're going to create an update. It will be an automatic behavior for the referencing. The thing is, there is no referencing because these are new assets. So that's why we did not use the ID, because they don't have an ID yet in the system. They will receive one upon creation. So now we're going to click Analyze File, and here we say, okay, no issues, you can just import. Execute import, and you see that it registered 2 new assets. So now if we close our list, well, what do you know? Here we go, we have our 2 new gates that are here, gate 2 and gate 3 in our system. And because we took the same asset type as the one that we already had, so AVDGS1 is a save.x, and these are one as well, it has also inherited the maintenance cycle that this asset type already has, and also the image. So you see that it's real easy for you to create new assets in your system or to change properties of existing assets in the system. I invite you to play around, to do a few exercises just like I did to add 1 or 2 assets or to change the properties of 1 or 2 assets. And as we have in the instruction documentation, if something would really go wrong, we can always revert your instance to an earlier date. But it's always good to create a export of your asset data. Let's take all assets, also the gate one. And then you can export the data to the reporting module. So all assets, you can create a asset overview, generate report, and then in the system you will have a all assets backup. So we can generate that report that's now in the system, and you can also download it and store it somewhere else so you don't lose your asset data if something would go wrong in the modification on the edition. So I would like to point out another great thing that we can do with the importer with ALIS is that now we have foreseen some additional fields that you can populate. So not just the name, the type, and everything that is vital. But if we go back to the documentation page for the importer, you see that we also have an example for all info. So there is a lot of more things that you can add into the system. So let's download this file and let's have a look. So this is something that you will also be able to see in your asset table here. Again, in the burger menu, now you can also edit columns, and there you will see that now all of the different fields that you can also have. So you see that you can show a serial number or an inventory ID if you have an external ID or a spare part management system or something. A purchase order, reference, date of purchase. These are fields that you are able to populate when you would purchase something from ADB or from another supplier, that you can put in there what the warranty date is of the light that is installed at a certain location. So that's great information. And you could have some additional text as well. So for example, base information or 1 or 2 channels or whatever information that you would like to add to a certain asset. For example, the pit, from which pit is my light powered, or from which regulator. So if we have a look at that CSV file, you see here all of the those columns are also here in the headers, and we have already provided some sample data for these things. You see, for generic text, we have dbase or a 2-channel, 1-channel. It's a snow plow ring. So let's just go ahead and import this sample file, because as you see, there is no ID in the system. There's an identifier, but that's an external identifier, or the QR code identifier, not the ID in the system. So I will yes, I can save this. I am going to our importer, and then I am able to upload that file. I will say update, let's analyze. And you see that now we try to update, there is no FRC asset type yet in our system. So in the example file, it refers to an asset type that is called FRC. And now, by means of exercise, let's create that asset type so that we can add it. So I will go to Asset Types and then select New Asset. And here now you will see I will add the FRC. It's, let's say, it's a halogen light. It has 2 fixation points. Manufacturer is ADB SafeGate. We can add a certain URL. We can choose a certain image that would represent an FRC. So let's take this one as of a runway center line. And now you see that we have created our asset type. So now if we would go back to our importer, and now we select that same file, and we try to import it again, you see that now, because the FRC type is existing, that we can perform our import. So we had 3 example records, so now they are in the system. So now I think we have to zoom out because the example files are actually, the positioning of those assets are in Belgium. So you see that automatically the main and sub area was created for those assets that we have imported. You see we can also click on those assets. Let's zoom in a bit more. And now you see, because we have this additional information, it's also being shown now. If these fields are empty, they are not being shown, but you see that we do get a lot of more information now with our assets. And now we are also able to use our asset list here and then choose which columns we would like to see. I am now just going to select all columns. It will be a bit crowded, but you see that all that information that we had in the Excel file is actually there. So that's a great way to get more grip on your assets and the properties that they have, and to know when maybe something was installed, or if you want to create a claim, often you have to give your sales reference, and that can all be added now to the lines. So together with that, we have also created a filter for it. So you see that now you are also able to search in those fields that are populated. So for example, here, inventory ID, external ref 1. And now you see that only our external reference 1 asset is being shown, is being filtered out. And that's exactly what we want to have. So if you reference your dates correctly, you are also able to use the date picker to also have a certain range or date selection going on. So let's try to do that properly. If we have a look at one of those assets, ADB SafeGate, so what did I put? Date of installation. So let's see that if we can filter down to only our external reference 1 asset, if we select the date of installation properly. So that's the 12th of December. So now we would be able to say, show me everything from the 1st to the 31st. And here you go. We have only this slide is popping up because it was installed between the 1st of December and the 31st of December. So you see that this can really bring, again, a lot of power for your asset management system that we have in ALIS. Feel free to also try this out. Let me know if you would have any further questions on it, and you can always get some additional information from our service desk documentation. Thank you for following, and let's see each other in another video.